Yeah, mine too.
Like I'm trying to move in front of the camera, but I can't get in the center of it.
No, huh? I'm kind of centered one too. Yeah, now y'all say something.
How did you do that, Anthony?
What? I don't know.
You're
Am I good?
Yeah,
yeah,
you're right.
yours is perfect. I'm this okay, I'm this way.
All right.
It's like you have to turn your head just to the side.
We are live, guys.
Hey,
A good way to welcome everyone, and
For
it's
sure.
gonna be a good conversation. We're gonna get started in about 30 seconds or so to give folks some time to get themselves situated and get ourselves situated. So we'll go live in a few more seconds.
Mhm. Mm.
All right, everyone. I know folks are starting to trickle in. Thanks for being here. It's 11 a.m. on the West Coast, the best coast.
Hey,
Feeling all right after that Laker win last night. Um, I'm Anthony DiMartino, the Government Affairs Director for Californians for Safety and Justice. Welcome you all to this conversation we're going to have today, Progress Not Prisons. I am fighting a little bit of a cough, so apologies. But as you all know, as the moderator, it's my job to do as little talking as possible and making sure our folks here with us are sharing their knowledge and their experiences. So I'm going to do this right for the first time. I'm going to explain Progress Not Prisons at the beginning instead of later on in the conversation. So these conversations that we've been moderating over the last month or so is really to highlight the $50 billion that the state of California locally, the county level, and at the state level spends on our criminal justice system, right? On a criminal justice system that doesn't really make anyone safer and doesn't heal folks, right? So we've been highlighting different sectors, different people, different groups over the last several weeks and months to really talk about what would we do if we could reallocate just 1% of that $50 billion, right? Today, I am honored and extremely excited to welcome some colleagues of mine to be here today to discuss with us felonies, the impacts of felonies, how felonies are used to stigmatize and demonize folks and to lock folks out of so many different job opportunities, housing opportunities, educational opportunities, right? This is this criminal justice system that does this to our folks, our communities, and doesn't make us safer. So with that, I'm going to stop talking and ask our folks to introduce themselves, say a little bit about who you are and what you do, and then we'll get into the deeper questions about the felonies after you all introduce yourselves, okay? So let's start with my man, Terence Stewart.
hello, I'm Terence Stewart. I'm the statewide director of California Safety and Justice Time Done Project. And what we do is we educate, motivate, and change policies and build a movement to help people with living with past conviction.
Great. Thank you, Terence. I'm really excited to have you here. It feels like it was just yesterday that we met back in November of last year, and, excited to have you and share your experience. Ed, my good sir, Ed Little, can you introduce yourselves for the folks trickling in and watching right now?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ed Little. I'm a policy advocate for Californians for Safety and Justice, focusing on time done and working out of Sacramento and the state capitol. Happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Appreciate you as always. And then Nathan, my man Nathan, please introduce yourselves for the folks.
How's everybody doing? I'm Nathan Purtle. I deal with our ambassadors' relationships, and I'm also a digital strategist. I've been a member of Time Done and Alliance for Safety and Justice for over a year. And looking forward to sharing this conversation with you all.
Thank you, Nathan. Really appreciate you being here with us. I know you all got busy schedules, a lot going on. Ballots dropped just a few days ago. I got mine in the mail yesterday. So, we'll have some more information later on about voting. But please, if you haven't registered to vote, register to vote. You can do that at Progress Not Prisons. Let's get this conversation started. I'm going to start with you, Terrence. And this question's for all of y'all, and take it how you want to. But talk a little bit about, what brought you to the work. How has a felony impacted you? And talk to us a little bit about Time Done and this Time Done movement that's not just California, but, really nationwide. So, yeah, I'll start with you, Terrence. Go ahead.
Well, my name is Terence Stewart, and what brought me to Time Done and being an advocate for people living with past convictions is that I have a past conviction. And when I was released and back into society, I started going to college. And that's when I started finding out about all the barriers that I had to face, when it came down to jobs and housing, and then became licenses and then family reunification. I had issues on all these things, and going to college, and it gave me a platform where I could talk about the issues I was going through, and doing it. I got deeper and deeper involved in this type of work. And I started, my first job as a community organizer was running phone banks for Prop 47, and Prop 47, the Safe Neighborhoods and School Act. And, at that time, the landscape that we see for criminal, quote unquote, criminal justice reform, wasn't like what it is today, so during Prop 47, I started being really active in the community and started working with a lot of different people. And from there, I continued to do this work, and then it went from Prop 47 to 57 to so many other bills and assembly bills and Senate bills that we worked on throughout the years, and local ordinances and stuff. So, I honestly, and I say this all the time, that I didn't choose this work chose me, and unlike Time Done, is national because nationally, you have 48,000 barriers that a person has after he convicted of a felony or convicted of any crime, and then so that's why the need for it national, because that's a lot of barriers, because like I said before, even in my wildest dreams, I could never count to 48,000 by ones. You know what I mean? That would take a long time. So just imagine that's how many barriers we face as people living with past conviction.
Yeah, and I hope we can get into that conversation a little bit later during this dialogue. And Terrence, what I really heard was too the community aspect, right? The community organizing and finding community, whether it was in the education system or you doing organizing work, and I think that's so important, right, for all of us, that we need to find community. So Nathan, can you talk a little bit too about your experience, why you gotten into this work, and I know you're really active, obviously, on social media and the community that you've built and that you have. Can you talk to me a little bit about too what that means to you?
How I got involved in this work is I'm also formerly incarcerated. I'm 10 years now since the last time, and the last time that I was formally incarcerated. And I got into this work is because I realized, one, after I was formally incarcerated, it was hard for me to find a job. So therefore, I had to create my own company. I had to employ myself. I had to empower myself, and I had to give myself a second chance, because as much as we, speak about how amazing America isn't big on second chances. So the way I got into this work is I knew that there were millions of other men and women just like me. They just didn't have the opportunity. So I started to go back into our communities, mentoring young men and women, mentoring adults. And I build a brand around that of, sharing hope and inspiring those who needed that inspiration during these trying times, especially after you've made a mistake, and you were formerly incarcerated, it becomes layered. You're not only trying to prove to the justice system that you've changed, you're trying to prove to, the job opportunities that you've changed, to your friends and your families, and the weight becomes really heavy. So I just wanted to make myself that hope that if I did it and the people around me did it, that you can do it as well. So that really inspired me to start getting in this work. And, I found an opportunity through Jay Jordan from Alliance for Safety and Justice to do it in this space. So I'm very excited and very honored to be here. I'm very excited to be, a voice of Time Done, and a voice of Alliance for Safety and Justice. And with my social media platform, it was just storytelling. It was just the story of redemption. It was a story of a kid who just never gave up. It was a story, of a kid that said, no matter what I've done in my past, my future can be so much brighter. And people just started to roll with me on that journey. And, I ended up here and, we're still moving.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, makes me think of a quote. I'm the quote guy on social media. It's like every saint has a past and every sinner has a future, right? And listening to Nathan and then Terrence talk about, you all are building community, right? And I keep highlighting this. And I didn't know where we were going to go with this just even at the beginning, but I keep highlighting this because you think about how important community is to healing, how important community is to acceptance, how important community is to love, and how much we can get done with relationships instead of ostracizing folks in prisons and in cages by building communities and healthy communities and allocating funds to healthy communities. We can heal and give folks second chances. So that's like already a theme I'm hearing both of you talk about. I want to kick it to my man, Ed. And Ed, share a little bit of how, what brought you to the work, why the work's important, and anything else you want to intro and kick it off with.
Thank you, Anthony. Like my colleagues, I believe that I am called to this work to help our people be freed of the chains, the invisible chains of discrimination, of poverty, and over-criminalization of our communities. And watching for a long time individuals trying to become whole after they come home from prison and not having those opportunities. And so, I said I have to do something about this, because if not me, then who? And so, I felt like I was called to do something, and I wanted to align myself with other folks who were willing to make a change in this space. In terms of the felony conviction, those who know me particularly well know that I typically don't like to lead with that. And the reason being is that, oftentimes, as people will say that, they don't judge people because of a felony conviction, particularly here in California. A lot of folks in California believe that they're liberals, but what I've come to learn for over the 20 years that I've been doing this work is that some of your most progressive and liberal people are people that will prejudge you based on the fact that you have a felony conviction. And I've been in thousands of conversations with folks, and what I typically like to do is lead with my expertise and my experience in this space. And I notice that when I do that, the conversation moves in a very positive, very productive direction. And I notice as soon as I share with an individual that, yes, in fact, I have been impacted by the criminal justice system, the conversation changes. And you can watch an individual and you begin to see this movie or this video playing in their minds of all the biases and all the preconceived notions and ideas about people who've been in prison, the ideas that have been perpetuated in this society for years about what a person looks like and who a person is that has been to prison. And so at that point, people tune out. And so I've seen this so many times. And what I've come to understand is that I personally am not going to let the world define me. And I'm not going to let the world define my expectations. Because if I let the world define my expectations, the world will put me in a box and try to keep me there. And I'm not going to accept that because I know who I am. I know what I am. I know the importance of what I do. And most importantly, I know what I want to do for future generations after I leave this earth. And so I'm committed to that, regardless of what one thinks of me or what one thinks of my past. Because one thing that I know for sure, as you stated, Anthony, we all have a past. We all have things that we may not be proud of. We all have things that the world might consider to be bad or evil in one respect, but if someone else does the same things, they're held up as heroes in this society. And so I don't allow the world to judge me. What I want the world to judge my work.
Wow. Thank you, Ed. I mean, thank all three of you for that opening. You gave me a lot of different ways to go with this, especially just right now there, Ed, and something you said about making folks whole, being whole. I'm curious. I want to kick it to Terrence first for this. What does being whole look like to you? What is coming back into society, right? Going to school, working, community organizing, grinding through politics, grinding with the family stuff. What does it look like to be whole for you guys? Terrence, can you start with that?
Like, well, I mean, for me, like you said, everything whole, everything that that I need to look. Let me step back. It's 4,800 barriers that you face in California once you get a past conviction, and they let you out of jail with $200 gate money, and how far does $200 go in California for living, or even clothes, and you're out there. And you have all these barriers with $200, and an average person has a hard time getting a job. So just imagine when you have all these barriers, and so like, how do you get to the point to having $200 gate money to making $4,000 a month to like live, and so like it's all kinds of things, like for some people it'll be college, that will put them in a pipeline, towards success. Others is going to be looking for trades and different stuff, but also like that's the money aspect, but then it's also like housing, housing is key, you know what I mean? Like, because like for me, I have issues with housing, and like, having a house, a place that you can be secure, a place that you can rest your head, a place that you can raise a family, sit back and think. That's key, you know what I mean, to the whole person, So it's like education, jobs, housing, family reunification. Some people when they've been going away from their families for a long time, like they have to get back reunited with them, and like that's also a part of becoming a whole person, so like it's all these things, that are day-to-day things, but for so many people they're taken for granted because you don't realize how significant things is until they take it away from you. And then like for me, like the fact that I was being denied housing when I had a wife who never committed a crime. I had kids who had never committed a crime. So my felony just didn't affect me. It affected them, you know. And as a human being, I felt less than a man when my kids and my wife are put in this predicament, you know. So like for me, housing made me whole. You know, well, one of the things that did, you know, it helped my whole being as far as me as an individual, but also my family, you know, that we all live together. And then so like, you know, I think like, you know, it's many facets to it, and I could deliver on this for overarching, but one of the biggest things for me was housing, because like I said, I went to college and I did a lot of good work, and I got at least 20, 30 awards when I was in my undergrad, and they still wouldn't let me live nowhere. You know, and as one part of myself was fulfilled as far as education, but then another part of me was not fulfilled as far as housing, you know. So like, you know, I'm halfway, it's not even a whole, you know what I mean? Like you said, the whole person is like all these different things, felonies that block me from being a whole person, and the stipulations that they hold me back to reaching my full potential.
I'm sorry to hear that, Terrence, and you know, thank you for sharing. And because you know that is important, right? I think too often we talk about, you know, and we should be talking about the barriers to finding a job, right? And the barriers to education, but we don't always talk about the housing. We take that for granted, and you know, it's a challenge for people that don't have, you know, a criminal conviction to find housing, affordable housing in California. And so, you know, I appreciate you sharing that with us, Terrence, and I know how much that means to you. So, you know, thank you for being real with us. And thank you also for talking about the collateral consequences to families, right? My former boss, Assemblymember Shirley Weber, always talked about, you know, families, children, they're the ones that have to do time too. You know, and so it's not just affecting you all when you're locked up, it's affecting everyone. And then even afterwards, right, it's affecting y'all. And this is generational trauma, right? So, you know, thank you for sharing, Terrence. Nathan, I want you to jump in really quick on this question too. You know, what does it look like to be whole, or trying to get to a place to where you feel whole as a person?
That's a layered question for me, because being whole with me started out internally. It started out forgiving myself. It started out giving myself a second chance. It started out with me saying that I am enough, regardless of what they try to take away from me. That was to be whole internally, but to be whole externally in America, as a Black man, when we are born as second-class citizens, no matter how much money that we have, when we are judged by our skin tone, no matter what we have or where we go, to be whole in America, you know, with the past conviction, you know, not being able to have the right to bear arms to protect my family, you know, not being able to, without the proper resources, live where I want to live, you know, without the proper resources, ever being able to travel where I want to travel, like Canada, let's say Canada, for instance. You know, with the past conviction, you can't get into, you know, it's hard to get into places like Canada. So I would say to be whole would be to have all of my rights. To be whole would be to be able to remove, you know, my wrongs after a certain amount of time off of my criminal record. You know, to have my record, you know, my record expunged. So different levels of whole to me, I feel like internally, nobody can take that away from me. Internally, they can't take away my mind. They can't take away how free that I am, you know, on the inside. So as a man, I feel whole, but as an American citizen, I don't feel whole. And I feel like there's a lot of things that need to be changed and that should be changed, so that, you know, we can really see redemption, so we can really see, you know, second chances happen, you know, when you earn them. And, you know, so that would be my answer.
Thank you, Nathan. I mean, I love that. I think I hear a couple different things in there too. I hear that for you to be whole, you were doing things that are in your control, right? Like you can control that internal work, and now you're trying to help control the narrative, right? And help control the changes that we need to make externally, right? But you've done a lot of that internal work, which is amazing. And also, I think a thread that I'm hearing is some mental health, right? Social trauma, traumatic experiences with the prison system, right? And then what that does to you, and what you had to do internally to get yourself in a place where you felt whole. So, big ups to you. Thank you for sharing that. Ed, you want to answer this question? I know you kind of the one that sparked me on asking this question, but if you want to add anything to this before I kind of move us to our next question.
Sure. Thank you, Anthony. When you talk about being made whole, one of the things that I learned early on, as I was a very young man in prison, was that I was part of a whole. And so, as a young person that grew up fighting a lot, when I went to prison, I actually realized that a lot of the things that I thought were important to fight about weren't really important. And when I found myself in quote unquote the belly of the beast, I really realized now you have a real fight in front of you. Now the fight that you have before you now is a fight with purpose. And so I've been committed to that fight. And one thing that I know is when you do something for a long time, you get good at it. And I got very good at standing up and opposing this system. And when it comes to being made whole, it's not just an individual choice or an individual goal, but the goal is to see all my people whole, not just me. Because if I can eat, if I have health care, if I have a place to stay, and my brother and my sister and their children don't have that, then I'm not whole. And so I am constantly working, striving to make sure that all my people have the justice and the civil rights and the things that they need as human beings on this planet. And so the work is never done. And I understand that I'm joining a fight that has been in process before I got here. And it's a fight that will be going on when I leave. But I'm going to make my contribution to make sure that the fight for those that come after me is just a little bit easier than it was for me when I inherited it.
Yeah, thank you, Ed. I relate to that. I hear that. I think I personally have not experienced the criminal justice system the same ways as you all have. I have some secondhand experiences, but I relate in the sense of community and as a whole, and the idea that if one of my brothers, one of my sisters isn't free, none of us are free. And injustice anywhere, right, is a threat to justice everywhere. So, I do this work because of that, because I want to see all of us free. And the empathy, right, the love in me for you all, it hurts when I know you all aren't free. And the collateral consequences, like I said, that just kills me. So, I'm honored to be in the fight with you guys. And thank you. I want to shift us to, a question more about safety, right? And how over-reliance on felonies and prisons and the criminal justice system in general impacts our collective public safety, our public health, our public wellness. So yeah, can you guys talk a little bit about how the over-reliance on felonies and prisons impacts our collective safety and collective health? Who wants to jump in? Terrence, you want to go first? All right, you go ahead, my man.
I think I'm gonna just stay in the same rhythm. I'm gonna go first. So like the over-reliance on felonies, I think it was something that you mentioned, and to everybody's point, because you mentioned it in everybody, is that community. The over-reliance of felony is community. How you said you got family members who don't have records, but like, you know, it's family members of mine who do have records, as far as my grandfather, my father, me, my uncles, cousins, you know. So like when they say like these statistics of 1 in 3 Black men go to jail, these are our family members. If you come from this family, you know. So like, you know, the over reliance of that, like I said, to this community, right? If you have one community where a whole lot of people got 48,000 barriers, you know, what does that do to that community? You know what I mean? Like, it makes that community at a disadvantaged state, because the simple fact that everybody in there have all these barriers, you know? So like, you know, like, this is how felonies, you know what I mean? Like could do it. And then like, for also, like, you know, how does it impact public safety? I think it's very much entwined to public safety, because we know, like, from the 13th Amendment, you know what I mean, it validated involuntary servitude, you know. So like, you know, the people who you know what I mean, implement, you know, is agents of public safety, you know. And like, you know, so like that targets certain communities, and we see all the stuff that's going on all around the world, you know, and it's because certain communities are targeted, you know. And so like, how does it impact our community? Is like, I just honestly believe that with the felony, with the 13th Amendment being connected to involuntary servitude, like, it's never going to be about rehabilitation. It'll always be about involuntary servitude, you know. And you know, our communities will continuously be targeted, you know. And does it make me safer? No, because like, we have 48,000 barriers, and you have certain where the whole community is, like I said before, like, in a disadvantaged state, because a lot of people got felonies in certain areas where areas are quote unquote high crime areas. So like, now that whole community, like, you know, is at a disadvantaged state. And if you can't got no jobs, you can't get no legal licenses, you ain't got no housing, how does that make that community any safer? It doesn't. So like, you know what I mean? So I feel like, you know, how does it impact our safety? In so many different ways. One, the felony is connected to slavery. It's connected to keeping our communities at a disadvantaged state, you know, and it's also involved around all these collateral consequences of criminal conviction. So like, you know, within that, you know, that's not helping out these communities that's been plagued with all kinds of hurt for years, you know.
Thanks, Terrence. Nathan, you want to jump in and add some of your thoughts to this question?
Yeah, mine would be one of the things that we say as an organization is what we invest in grows. If we're investing in, you know, mass incarceration, we're investing in keeping people, you know, in jail and in prison and trapped within the system after, you know, they are incarcerated. You place barriers so that it becomes harder for those people to thrive. And these are communities who are, you know, multiple of us are living with PTSD. We are living with, you know, seeing all of these traumatic things happening every single day, whether if it's in the news or if it's in our own communities. And we need the resources to heal. Our communities have never been given the resources to heal. There's never been, you know, massive investing in our schools. There's never been investing in our mental health. There's never been, you know, investing in, you know, rehabilitation. And when someone comes home and they've done their time and they want to work, why do you limit them the options of great jobs? Like, why do you send them to places that don't, you know, that pay minimum wage? Either option, these citizens going to be able to receive that same treatment. You make it harder for them to get into college. You make it harder for them to get jobs so that they can go home, get home, take care of their families, have equal opportunities, and the children have all of the resources that they need to thrive. If you're investing in juvenile facilities and you're looking for every single thing that these children are doing, whether it's taking them straight from high school class to juvenile, if it's a fight, taking them straight from high school to juvenile, if someone does something like petty theft. But, if you're in Beverly Hills and you're there and you go right to some type of facility, or you get a slap on the wrist and you get, a second chance. I just think that we should level out the playing field with the resources that we are allocating to our communities, with where we are investing in our communities, and how we are, not policing communities, but protecting communities and helping find solutions and options. I feel like there's no relationship between Black and brown communities and law enforcement, and that's a huge disconnect. And we are constantly having to fight for every penny. As we spoke earlier about the $50 billion spent on, mass incarceration, and we're fighting for a percentage of that just to have better schools, just to, help with homelessness, all of those various things, just, so people can, if you have an addiction, you can go and get treatment, opposed to being locked in a cage and trying to ruin your mind and break you in order to get that proper treatment. Therefore, those with money go right to, Malibu beach houses, and they're weaning themselves off of alcohol and drugs, and they're constantly relapsing, but they don't have consequences. So, I think that we definitely should focus on investing in our communities, because again, what we invest in grows. And yeah, I'm glad to be on a team that's fighting, for that change and scrapping just so that we can have proper resources. And I think that's unfair, but we're dealing with it.
Yeah, wow. I mean, Nathan, you touched on so many different things, and I know Ed's gonna, really bring home this question too with a solid answer. But I think something I just really thought of, right, is like, the state of California is committed to closing 2 prisons in the next 2 to 3 years, right? Governor Newsom's already announced 1 prison that they're planning on closing in the next year and a half or so, right? But I know so much of the arguments for closing prisons, right, is where these prisons are located, right, that they create jobs for communities, right? And just to think about what you said, if what we invest in grows, how about we invest in other jobs in these communities? How about we invest in college campuses, community college, schools in these communities, invest in tech operations in these communities, right? Why do we think in these communities where prisons are at, where generally it's low-income folks, right? It's low-income Black and brown folks, sometimes low-income white folks, where a lot of these prisons are built, that the jobs have to be prison jobs. Why can't there be other kinds of jobs, right? Like, I just think about that alone. And the argument that we can't close this prison is because it's going to lose jobs. It's just, I get that folks want good paying jobs, but there's so many other good paying job opportunities that we can invest and build in instead of building prisons. So sorry for my rant on that, but you sparked that in my mind, Nathan, with what you're talking about, investing, what we invest in grows. But I want to make sure Ed gets his chance to answer this question and bring home some of his own experience and knowledge. So Ed, talk a little bit about, the over-reliance on felonies and prisons, and really how that doesn't make us any safer at all.
Thank you, Anthony. There's a lot there, but I will begin with this. Budgets on local, state, and federal governments really define what our priorities are. And so a politician can say a lot of nice things. And right now we have a lot of people trying to speak to this progressive narrative about ending mass incarceration and over-policing. But when you look at the budgets at the state and local and federal levels, you see that they are still determined to invest in a system that does not make us safer. If an individual needs education, needs healthcare, needs counseling, and then you have communities who are experiencing challenges, adding more police doesn't solve any of these social problems. And what I've come to realize is that every time there's a social problem in the world, we think the answer is more police. And so when you look at California, for example, the state that has the 5th largest economy in the world, and yet we have some of the poorest schools in the country. We have some of the highest taxes in the country, but some of the poorest schools. Why is that? Because of our investment priorities. There is no way you can justify spending $50 billion on a criminal legal system. There's just no justification for that, particularly if the justification from many folks in law enforcement and many folks in the legislature would tell you that we need to make this investment in law enforcement because it's going to make us safer. Well, why is it when you talk to law enforcement, they're always talking about how crime is getting worse? And so we're constantly giving you more money, but crime is constantly getting worse. So obviously you're not the answer. Now, the reality is, to be clear, crime has been going down for at least the past 40 years. But that's not the narrative that people want to share. However, at the same time, when you look at these investments in law enforcement, what it does to the overall community is it makes us lazy. And what do I mean by that? We don't use our imagination in terms of how do we deal with social problems? How do we come up with solutions, ideas to address social problems? We become so lazy that we just turn to law enforcement and we don't think outside of the box about other ideas and other ways to address the problems that affect our communities. And when it comes to safety, the reality is public safety is a term that we probably, in our larger narrative, we probably should stop using that term. Because at the end of the day, people want peace of mind. I don't care whether you live in a predominantly Black community or Black and brown community, poor community, white community. Everybody wants peace of mind. The peace of mind to be able to go outside for a walk, go for a jog, go to the store, and not have to worry about any problems. To be able to send your kids outside to play, or send them to school and know that they're going to be okay, know that they're going to be safe. That's what we're looking for. People just want to be at peace. And that's not something that affluent people want, but poor people don't want. We all want the same thing. It's just the strategy in which the state goes about determining who gets what is different. And so, as Nathan mentioned, we are constantly fighting for every drop of justice that we get in this country and in this state in particular. And so we don't get that much justice here in California. We get drip drops of justice. And the problem is that we have elected officials who get way too much credit for doing too little. And we have to demand more of the individuals that we elect to represent us. And if they're not going to make our priorities their priorities, then we need to have someone else in these positions representing us and investing our tax dollars in areas that will inevitably make our community safer, make our community stronger, make our schools better, get us the services, the counseling, the treatment, and everything that we need, the trauma recovery centers that we need to go back to your original question, to truly make ourselves whole. Because the opposition, I know what they want. They want more police, they want more jails, they want more prisons, and they want more electronic monitoring. I respect them for what they want because they're very clear about it. What I don't respect is people who stand in my face and lie to me, but yet give me the same thing that my opposition wants. Be very clear about what it is that we want and who's on our side. Because from my experience, what I see is you have a lot of people who will lock arms with you and say that they're with you. But then when we roll out our list of demands saying we want better schools, we want safer communities, we want counseling, we want better health care, then people bag up from us and say, oh, you moving too fast. You want too much. Then no, we can't give you, we can't do all of that this year. That costs too much. But it's never too much money to give police. It's never too much money to build more prisons. So why is it when it comes to making people whole, when it comes to making our community safer, when it comes to building schools, when it comes to making college affordable, how come that's always something that can be cut? But law enforcement, oh, that can never be cut under no circumstance. We have to come to terms with who's with us and who's against us in this fight. And we got to start putting people out there because people are getting way too much credit for doing way too little.
Brother Ed dropping the mic. All 100. I hear you, man. You know, I think multiple things, right? I mean, just a tangible, real life example of what you just said, Ed, right, is after George Floyd, so many legislators took a knee outside the Capitol, yet they couldn't pass really meaningful police reforms this year, and they had opportunities. You know, they passed a few bills that had to do with some police reform, but they didn't pass the real meaningful ones. You know, and several legislators that took a knee, they didn't go up on those bills. And so that's what you're talking about, Ed, you know, locking arms with us, taking meetings with us and saying, I hear you, I got you, you know, I'll be there, and not being there, finding ways to not be there. And then to your other point, you know, when it came to the budget cuts this year, you know, the criminal justice budget for the state, at least, right? This isn't the $50 billion, it's a part of the $50 billion, but, you know, $14 billion worth, they didn't really see any cuts. It was one of the only sectors in the state budget that didn't see a cut. But our state prison population, at least as of a couple of weeks ago, first time in like 20, 25 years, we're under 100,000 people. We've let out over 15,000 people at least. And crime hasn't gone through the roof. You know, this hasn't been terrible, but we had to have a pandemic to get to this point. Right. And we had to see terrible outbreaks. We're still seeing outbreaks in our prisons. Right. And folks dying. And I think that's what I think of when you talk about not using the word public safety. Right. I'm thinking about public health, public wellness. Right. Peace of mind. If our prisons have got these outbreaks, we all know that's going to go into the community. Right. And we're not taking care of these folks. We're not giving them opportunities. You know, Ed himself pushed a huge bill this year on SB 369 on a reentry commission, because we were hearing from our folks that there wasn't opportunities for folks, right? Before this pandemic, we weren't doing reentry right. And now we're letting all these folks out, and we're expecting them to find shelter. You know, we're expecting them to find jobs, be back in their communities. But we didn't have a structured way of doing this. And, you know, unfortunately, that bill got vetoed. We're going to come back. We're going to keep organizing. But that's what Ed's talking about here is like our leaders, you know, tell us one thing and then they do another thing. So we got to continue to hold them accountable. And that's why progress, not prisons. That's why we got to vote. That's why you got to vote. And if you don't like the candidate on the ballot, you run or you help others run, right? We got to build that bench as well. And so there, you know, there's a couple things on this ballot we can't really talk about, but I'm really excited about. And if you're diving into the ballot and the propositions, you know, there's going to be some ones that directly affect folks like Terrence and Nathan and Ed. In helping us, you know, vote. So, you know, pay attention to what's on the ballot. I hope you all are filling that out. I'm going to take audience questions if there are any before we kind of go into the very last question. You know, the last questions, you guys have already kind of touched on it. Really, actually, I want to hear more like what makes you feel hopeful in this time. You know, I think we've already kind of talked about what does progress look like for our folks. So, while questions potentially come in from the audience, I'm gonna kick it with you, Terrence, first to say, talk to me a little bit, talk to the audience a little bit about what makes you hopeful in this time.
Well, it's things that's being conversated about that have never been conversated before. Especially like the whole concept of defunding the police. We have been talking about, divesting from the whole criminal justice system and invested in our communities for years, and like now it's to the point where it's finally being heard, So like, I'm hopeful for this paradigm shift from law and order to healing and safety, to like the paradigm shift from law and order to progress, not prisons, to a point where like, we're actually putting in the plays to do progress, not prisons. Like the whole fact that like we exist and we got this, and then we have Kill the Vote. That's the actual vote. This is the educational campaign of why we need to vote, but the actual vote is Heal the Vote. And like these things are coming are about, and what I'm hopeful about is that, like I said, when Prop 47 came, the criminal justice landscape, was about felon-friendly jobs, backpack drive giveaways. Now we're actually, to the point where we are at play in, making policy change. People were living with past convictions. And like, shout out to Tamisha, she's running for city council in Antioch, California, as a formerly incarcerated person, a person who took place and helped found, Time Done, Second Chance Alliances, and also, her person, the person who's running for mayor is also in Antioch as a formerly incarcerated person. I see people running for Senate and stuff all over the country now as formerly incarcerated people. They have healed in Florida, Desmond, he's still doing what he's doing to help all the returning citizens, get their voting rights. They got free to vote on the ballot this year, so like, all these things, and the crime survivor bill, the bills that we have worked on, they passed, some of them didn't, but some of them did, and it's just like watching the history from how long I've been doing it and see how things are moving today is a whole lot more hopeful, and seeing like, I got, could talk to Brother Ed and Brother Nathan and you, Brother Anthony, you know what I mean? And like, we can actually go and talk to elected officials and get the word out on Twitter. And like, our lives, this would make me helpful. For the most of my life, I felt as if I was voiceless. I felt as if like, nobody cared, and like now I feel that my voice is being heard somewhat, even though I still think people are trying not to hear me, but I feel that I'm being heard, and I got people like you and everybody on this call, and Brother Jay just had a baby, you know what I mean? And so many other people, Time Done Stockton and Time Done IE, and you know what I mean, Pillars of the Community in San Diego, and Project Safe Return and Boss, and so many other different organizations that get up every day, Homeboy Industry, and make a difference, and this is what gives me hope. Every day I wake up to see on Facebook the different work that different people all over the state of California, all over the world is doing to help people living with past convictions. And I'm hopeful for that.
Thank you, Terrence. And I hear you and I see you. I feel you. Nathan, what gives you hope? What makes you hopeful right now?
I would say what makes me hopeful is that I'm watching everyone around me start to learn what we're up against. Fight we won't tolerate. From kids to adults, I'm watching this shift, not only from, the way that we're fighting the criminal justice system, but from what we're putting in our minds, what we're putting in our bodies, the way that we are interacting with each other, the way that we are giving each other game and knowledge, the way that we are, sharing everything that we know. And then also we are learning that we can run for governor, we can run for city council, we can run to become president, we can run to become mayor and district attorneys, and those things that we are learning, and we are putting people in those positions by voting, and by understanding that the game that we thought was fully rigged still has some loopholes. We are finally learning that we have to put ourselves in the game. We have to put ourselves in those chairs and in those seats, so things don't happen the way that they happened in Louisville with Breonna Taylor, because there will be somebody who actually has morals and values in that seat. So we are putting more people in those seats. We are voting more. We are organizing more. We are combating everything that's put in front of us, no matter what it is. We are no longer standing down. We are becoming even more intelligent and bright and brilliant than we ever were. And I just love the focus. I love the fact that every time something happens, it's not just a hashtag anymore. Is we are going out there and we're fighting and fighting every single day. And there's no more laying down. There's no more retreating. There's no more regrouping. People are actually on the front lines, and we are actually figuring it out. So I'm very, very hopeful that, the ones that came before us, did not die in vain, did not fight in vain. I'm just hopeful for, our future, because I think we get it now. We get it. So I'm very hopeful.
Yeah, I think, when we fight, we win. And, I'll say this, that I'm hopeful because folks that have never been in this fight, that know me personally and know why I'm in the fight, but have never been in the fight, are asking me questions like, how can I get involved? That's what makes me hopeful, right? That my job, I've always said this, is to make sure you all are leading with the experience and the knowledge, and that I can open whatever doors that I can because of my experiences and knowledge, but that you all lead, and that I need to bring other folks with me that don't have the same experiences, because once all of us are fighting, we win. That's truly how I believe it. So, Ed, I see one question's come in yet, but I want to make sure, Ed, you get to answer this question. What makes you hopeful? Please share with the audience what gives you hope right now.
What gives me hope, first and foremost, is the people that I'm surrounded with. The fight starts with the people closest to you, and I'm proud to be in the trenches with Nathan, Terrence, Anthony, and my CSJ and CSSJ and ASJ family. When I think about Lenora Anderson, Robert Brooks, Jay Jordan, the people who are the head of this organization, and to know that they had the vision to look at how we can divest away from a punitive criminal legal system long before it became fashionable. That gives me hope, because I know, as I look around the country and I look around this state and I hear people talking about what it takes to change our reality, to change our world, the narrative is beginning to shift, and more people are beginning to understand what it's going to take to change this system. Because when I started doing this work many years ago, most people threw their hands up and with this idea that it's just too big, and it's just the work that we're doing is just, it's not enough. But years later, when I look at where we are today, I am hopeful of the change that we will make today. And I am hopeful for this next generation when I see them in the streets, when I see them in state government, demanding justice, demanding accountability, and not only demanding justice and accountability, but having a list of priorities, saying, this is what we want, this is what we expect from you. When I see this generation moving in a direction where not only are they ready to fight, but they know what they're fighting for. And so it's not just about a fight, but it's about what are we going to do when we change this system? What are we going to do when we change the current system that we have before us? We're prepared to stand something up that's just, that's fair for all people, so that all people can be made whole. So yes, we can have progress and not prisons.
Exactly. We're not just saying not this. We're saying not this. We
Absolutely.
want this. I hear you. I mean, I think too often, you know, at the federal level, right? One group is always just saying no to things, and they're not offering a solution. I mean, you could argue that all people in the federal government are, you know, not offering real solutions or tangible solutions. But what you just said, Ed, I hear you. Like, you're right. We're saying we don't want this. We want this. And that's what we're going to organize around. That's what we're going to fight for. I think a question was supposed to come in. I know we're getting to that hour time. It hasn't felt like an hour at all because, you know, all three of you just dropping knowledge. You know, I'm always better. I always come better. What, Terrence? You're on mute.
You dropping knowledge too. You dropping knowledge too, man.
You guys set me up. You guys set me up. I always come out better after these conversations. You know, I appreciate y'all. You know, so you know, if this question isn't going to populate, you know, we can. Oh, here we go. Okay, so besides voting and lobbying, what can people do to help bring about change within the system at large and within their local community? Who wants to take this question first?
Oh, okay. Brother Yanni, organize. You know what it is, man. You know, like we have voice, you know, and like we don't have to settle for it. You know, we can meet with our elected officials. We can like you said, other than that, but like it's empowering each other. You know, we can have organizing trainings and steel sharpen steel. And we one of the things that we're trying to do is we're opening up a book club, and we're going to start reading literature that addresses the issues that we have in, so that when we come in certain situations, we have the language and other different strategies on how to get the job done. So like, you know, it's power when everyday organizing, you know that, Yanni, you know, I mean, glad to see you on. Yeah.
Ed, you want to chime in?
Sure. What I would say is that it's very important for us to read, for us to study, for us to, whatever area of the system that you're most passionate about, focus on that area. Study those policies related to that area. Study the laws that are related to that area. Study the people who hold the levers of power, and watch how they vote, and begin to develop strategies and ways in which to hold those folks accountable. But most importantly, understand that there are a lot of movements, there are a lot of organizations that are out here doing the work. Join an organization, join a movement, join Progress Not Prisons, join Time Done, join CSSJ, Crime Survivors for Safety and Justice. Join one of these organizations out here that are doing the work, that have an infrastructure in place and have a track record of doing this work. Join them, because when you join us, you make us and you that much stronger, because we're not strong without you, and you are not strong without us. But together we can change this system, and we can see and realize the investments we want in community, in safety, in health, in education, when we come together with one mind, with one voice, to say we demand more, we demand better.
All right. That's awesome. I appreciate that. I appreciate you guys. You know, we've gone a little over the hour mark. Oh, what's up, Terrence? You have something?
I think it was another question from Alfredo Awedo.
Oh, yeah. Okay, here we go. We're going to close with this one. So how can we help our youth from preventing not to go into the prison system, including the kids on special education? Most of them have mental illness.
That's why we're pushing Progress Not Prisons, because, like, you know what I mean? Like, we need help for the children with special needs, they don't need prison, and that's the whole campaign that we're promoting right now. Is the whole thing behind that is that is that we need alternatives to prison. Prison is not the answer for everything. Prison is not the answer for most things. You know what I mean? What we need is wraparound services. We need help. We need mental health. We need housing. We need jobs. We need mental, because I ain't never been to a psychiatrist, and I've been shot. I've been to prison. I've been everything else, and I never got no mental help. We need all types of wraparound services to help people in our community. So Alfredo, that's why this whole camp education thing is so that you can educate people on why they need special need programs and not prison for the youth.
Anyone else want to chime in on that one?
Progress, not prisons.
Yeah, progress, not prisons.
Yeah.
We got enough prisons. We need some progress. Too much prison. Too much spending, too much prison, anything. We got enough of that. The criminal justice, the whole thing, like I said before, on the 13th Amendment, that it validates involuntary servitude if you're a criminal. The whole criminal justice system, the premise in the word criminal is slave, man. So criminal equals slave in their mind. We don't need none of that. We need progress.
Yeah. It's a great way to close, y'all. I appreciate y'all. As we wrap up, I just want to we encourage you all to sign the pledge to vote, voting for measures that support our community, investments over increase in prison spending. So pay attention to what's on the ballot. Ask yourself, is this progress or is this prisons, right? Let's think about that. So you can do that at progressnotprisons.com. If you prefer our materials in Spanish, you can also visit progresosiprisionosno.com. And as always, I appreciate you all, gentlemen, for being here with us. I appreciate everyone that's tuned in. Thank you all for listening. And like I told you, Terrence, I'll tell you, Ed, Nathan, and all those paying attention. I hear you. I see you. I love you guys. And, the work continues. A couple more weeks until November 3rd. Voting is happening now. Voting is happening now, y'all. So we got to vote now. The election is November 3rd, but voting's happening now. So I appreciate y'all. Y'all have a blessed rest of your week. And Black Lives Matter.
Let's go.
Thank you.
Progress.